Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma met his Manipur counterpart Biren Singh in Imphal to discuss the ongoing crisis in the northeastern state. Sarma, who arrived in Imphal on a two-day visit, met Singh at the latter's official residence. The two leaders discussed the law and order situation in Manipur and the steps being taken to restore normalcy. This came after the central government has constituted a peace committee in Manipur under the chairmanship of Governor Anusuiya Uikey. The members of the committee include the Chief Minister, a few ministers in the state government, MPs, MLAs and leaders from different political parties. And according to the Ministry of Home Affairs, the committee also includes former civil servants, educationists, literature specialists, artists, social workers and representatives of different ethnic groups as well. Major General Sudhakarji, VSM veteran, joins us for this debate. He is a VSM veteran geopolitical expert. Mr. Sandeep Chatra, human rights defender, also with us on the program. Dr. Malim Ningthauja, chair of the Campaign for Peace and Democracy from Manipur, joins us on the show. And Glady Waifi Hunjan, activist, is also with us on the show. Before we in fact jump into this debate, let's listen in to this reaction.
People are expecting for complete normalcy to be restored, sir. And also the resume for the internet, sir.
Let us pray to God and Almighty. Let us pray to Almighty that peace not only come to Manipur, it permanently stays in Manipur. Thank you.
All right, we'll talk about this. Dr. Malam, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Can
Well,
you hear me?
appreciate you joining us and a very good evening to you. Well, what do you make of the people who are comprising this committee, which is going to be called the Peace Committee? The Home Minister has taken astute interest in making sure that whatever has been transpiring in Manipur for the last few weeks does not recur. Do you think enough has been done? Or do you think that some of the granular details pertaining to this rift between two communities in Manipur is still left for debate and open?
You know, I think substantial initiatives is still yet to come. I'm glad that the Peace Committee has been constituted today, but I don't know exactly who are the people involved in that. Though lots of the categories have been emphasized, but I'm not certain about the real composition. But if the cookies are involved, particularly those peoples who are seeking for separate administrations, and also peoples who are directly responsible for in one way or the other for the crisis. I mean, the stakeholders. If I don't know, I mean, if they are involved or not. I think if they are involved, then obviously the Peace Committee may have in near future some objectively and subjectively constructive results. This is my belief in the first instance.
Mr. Sandeep Chatra, what do you make of the situation at hand? Well, things are not as bad as they used to be, but the fact of the matter is that you just need, a small glint of, an ember or a fire for things to go south again. What is the permanent solution here? Are you in concurrence with the committee that has been formed? Do you think more members from either communities also should have been a part of this peace committee?
Hi, thank you, and greetings to all your viewers and the co-panelists. Glad to be here to discuss peace and the future of peace. I think, first of all, to welcome the formation of the Peace Committee. From what I've read in early reports, I don't know the names, but what I read in our early reports, that's a fairly wide-ranging committee with political leadership, more importantly, opposition parties of different ideologies and spectrums, I hope. Ethnic groups, I'm told that there are different ethnic groups, social activists, civil society organizations, civil servants. So prima facie, by the composition announced, it's a very wide-ranging committee, and that's a welcome step. As you know, there has been a lot of distrust, a lot of mistrust, and this action of forming a wide-ranging peace committee and then moving, I hope, with quick action of peace committee holding dialogues with stakeholders, with others, with community members, with villages, different territories, would be a very important step. You see, I am fundamentally of the belief that active listening, active learning, acting together These is vital in repairing the distrust that we have, in repairing faith, in building togetherness and harmony. So it's an important constitution, and I welcome it. To first off, I also think stable peace, and as Mr. Ninkhauja was pointing out, stable peace can only be stable if it's built on foundations of justice, and I think that's important. And therefore, and all peace building efforts must start, I believe, on the foundations of status quo, what was before the conflict broke out. So that status quo needs to be maintained in the short term as the peace committee acts, meets, feels, and also hopefully gives out an agenda for future. And at this point in time, there should be absolutely zero tolerance for any sort of violence. In the interim, in the last few weeks, we have seen sporadic and even more serious attempts to erode that peace. And I think that should be stopped, and there are enough and more security personnel in any case to be acting in that direction. There are various short-term and long-term measures. I'll quickly take a few minutes to lay them out, in my opinion, which are very vital in trust building. The short-term measures, of course, talking to people, healing, listening, but also attending to the immediate grievances, attending to the families which have been affected, whose shops have been burned, whose businesses have been spoiled, whose homes have been burned. So rebuilding those homes, rebuilding those livelihoods, opening those shops, those are great confidence builders. Likewise, those who are still in camps or now wanting to return home, a dignified treatment, which goes beyond compensation, which goes beyond ex gracias, to safety to return home, the dignified food support, sanitation, shelter facilities in the interim. These become very, very important. In mixed settlements, particularly in the areas where mixed settlements are, foothills and in certain towns, we must be very, very alert where the communities are together. And I think that those are the sites of first action for peace building to happen, in my opinion. But there are, as Mr. Ninkhauja was saying, there are those long-term issues, those, there are deep fault lines. Those deep fault lines are with reference to demographics. There have been population shifts over the last 2 decades or so. And of course, we await the census, but there have been fairly large population shifts, including habitation shifts, and those must be looked into. Similarly, this whole vexed question, or the difficult question of land, as we all know, Meiteis are in the valley, more fertile, but 10 to 15% of the land. Kukis, Nagas, and other tribal communities are on the hill tracts, less fertile, but under land speculation now with the east-west highway, as I was saying earlier sometime, and the land value is changing, but nevertheless less fertile. Their own population is also growing. So these all questions need to be sort of looked into, put into perspective, and those are deeper fault lines, which I'm sure the Peace Committee in those dialogues and also with evidence from the ground will look into to propose a way forward. What new land settlement can be done? What new futures hold? Similarly, there are 2 other issues: the tribal status, the demand which sparked off these protests in the immediate instance. There's a procedure for gaining tribal status. The local committee in 1965 had laid that out. What could be the criteria? And it's constitutionally mandated. So any efforts to seek a tribal status at this moment should hold, but in the long term need to be resolved through those procedures. There is a question which I learned last time from this discussion, but also from the ground, the question of poppy cultivation. Poppy cultivation has been stopped in the last instances. Lands under poppies have been reverted. Yet that's something that needs to be looked into, because certain states, more recently I was aware that in Uttarakhand, the government of Uttarakhand was considering how to legalize poppy cultivation, because poppy is not just the opium that we're talking of. That's for medicinal use. That could be regulated very strongly for medicinal use. But there's lots of other value of the plant. The stalks, the kind of commercial value beyond the medicinal value that it has for fabric, for shoes. So certain states are considering looking at poppy as a plant cultivation for use, and many of the farmers who are engaged in it, how could they be protected against the sort of bad use of poppy, if I may put it, the opiate use of poppy. which has to be regulated, but the commercial use of poppy for other stuff can be considered. So there are ways ahead. I am sure Peace Committee, aided and supported by various researchers and research elements, could look into also the longer term issues, which are really the deep fault lines. And stable peace would hold if those deeper fault lines, if those deeper fissures are addressed. And for that, you need a lot of those researches, a lot of that evidence,
Absolutely.
a lot of future-looking sort of propositions. Thank you, Vineet.
Absolutely. Great points, Mr. Chachra. Mr. Hunjan, if you're there with us. Mr. Hunjan, if you can hear me.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for speaking with us. I'm not able to hear you very clearly. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay. Well, we are talking about also the collapse of how civil societies have worked in Manipur. We have seen this kind of a violence in the 90s as well, but the current state of unrest only goes on to highlight that the civil society has failed. It has failed to safeguard itself. It's failed to perceive what rights and duties are, and governments and agencies, security agencies, have had to step in regularly to control this kind of a behavior. But this is not going to be a long-term solution any which way. What do you propose should be done?
See, I think the immediate action has to be to listen to the Home Minister in his last visit from 29 May onward. He was there for 3 days, and he appealed to both the group responsible for killing each other. He appealed to them to maintain peace and normalcy, at least for 15 days. And unfortunately, the opposite happened. Killing, burning villages didn't stop. And I believe I believe that the central government and the state government, if they really desire, they can stop it. Manipur is not a big state. How can the violence go on for over a month? And then I also, I don't know what to even say. Right now, I'm standing here at Jantar Mantar. I don't know, I'll just go closer here. I don't know whether you can see at the background. So we pay respect to those who lost their life. It's very painful. We did a candlelight respect to all of them. Then that's the reason why I'm standing here. I couldn't even hear you clearly, but we have put up all those victims of the Kukizo community. Some families were able to attend. There were a lot of cry, emotional outpour. In this situation, I think the state government, even if they cannot curtail this killing, everyday killing, even if they cannot, I think it's time to get help from the central government in such a way that immediately it should stop. Like day before yesterday at the village of Hokkien, 3 people lost their life. One was a 70-plus elderly woman praying in the church. What is the sin that she has committed that she lost their life? That is very, very painful. I don't know whether you can see, they are minor, 7-year-old boy who was rushed to the hospital because he was shot at the head. He was rushed to hospital with his mother in an ambulance, was burned in the valley in Imphal. So, these are not normal kind of crime. A minor, a senior citizen. I really appeal to the state government and along with the central government to really see to our problem and stop somehow some normalcy. I plead to the central government to help us achieve that. That's my prayer. My throat is bad. A lot of I don't know whether you can hear me correctly.
I can hear you correctly, ma'am. Yes. I appreciate you joining us, and I appreciate your position as well. General Sudhakarji, I'll come to you now, sir. Sir, also there's an issue with the perception which has led to this particular problem, right? Our political language of majority and minority, hills versus valley dichotomy, developed and underdeveloped geographies, they have also dominated the discourse that has led to this particular problem. Do you think that it's about time we change that also? Because obviously, security agencies and the army are not meant to do what they're doing right now in Manipur.
Vineet, good evening. Thank you for inviting me to your show. I must take this opportunity to compliment all the previous co-panelists, very esteemed, learned panelists. In fact, I'm learning a lot from each and every one of them. Okay, let me put things in the perspective to answer your question. Development or no development, hillside or hill segment and the plain segment, there are a host of issues. Manipur today is in a serious spot. To identify a solution or narrow down to the solution, I would recommend, let's start with the trigger. As far as my understanding goes, I don't think I am wrong. The trigger has been the High Court order recommending inclusion of the Meitei in the scheduled tribe list. It has been either preceded or followed by the drive by the government machinery in the hill segment against the poppy cultivation, which has actually given rise to a discontentment amongst the hill tribe. That is where the understanding of the trigger is. Once we have understood the trigger in the instant case, because I failed to understand, having been gone into a kind of a research mode on the subject for past preceding several years, 7, 8, 9 years or so, there has been a relative peace and harmony in the same state, where abruptly out of nothing, out of the blue, suddenly things go out of hand. It is not understandable. I suspect there is a conspiracy theory. I suspect there is an external angle also. I do suspect there has been a lack of action, proactive action by the people who should have read the red line and taken measures. So having said that, let me come to a quick kind of a reflection of the immediate or the short term, the mid-term and the long-term solution that we should resort to. I'll by and by cover, Vineet, what you have asked me, that question of development and lack of development. In the short term, my co-panelists have beautifully covered, particularly Sandeep and the professor, they have covered it, and the lady, very eminent lady, covering the perspective in her own way, but giving out the real genuine reasons. I have no answer. I have all the empathies for the lives which have been lost. But short term, I think the solution lies in putting the military domination or the combing operation and the administrative measures in place so that some kind of a ceasefire, some kind of a prevention of violence breaking out or friction points or the flash points can be prevented. This is one issue which is coming to my mind. When I talk about the military, allow me to reflect upon one issue. Because of our northern border having gone in for an extended standoff, to my understanding, I do not have the specific details. I suppose there is a huge devoid of the army's presence there. It is only the central security apparatus or the police forces who are doing. I am not by any means am I trying to decry or deride the efficiency of the apparatus. They are doing a wonderful job, outstanding job. But the issue which is standing out is that there is a trust deficit which is coming by and by between the civilian population and the security apparatus. It's a very dangerous reflection which is coming into being, because this is how it started in 90s, and that was the trigger and the start point of the insurgency. So I'm fearing that unless we take adequate preventive measure in the short term, things may go out of hand. So when I talk about the military combing operation, it means that this 4,000 or more weapons, out of which 953 have been recovered till yesterday, we need to do much more and take very, very creative steps so that willing surrender of the weapons take place faster, the better. If the weapons continue to remain with the civilian population or the population which are aggrieved, then it may become well impossible for the security apparatus to bring in ceasefire or some kind of normalcy. Now come to the midterm. When I talk about the midterm, there are measures which have already put in place. I am told, given to understand, there is a judicial inquiry going into each and every fault lines and identifying as to whether the leadership or the people who mattered, have they failed in discharging their mandate? If so, they must be taken to task. They must be held accountable. And that is one. This is going to take some time. It is not going to take overnight. And the long-term perspective, Vineet, that we need to factor in the external threat. To me, what appears is that China is playing a big game. It is trying to create situation because, mind you, we have an Act-East policy. The land connectivity is through Imphal and through Manipur. Like Sandeep has very nicely covered, This is a denial position or kind of an effort by China, by 36 stratagem, without coming into play in the forefront. They are putting pressure on the military junta. Military junta in Myanmar itself, we have Meiteis and Kukis. There is a inter-community rivalry there. They are taking support of military junta to fight against each other. There is a migration taking place to our side. There is poppy cultivation. Yes, I do agree what Sandeep is saying. Poppy cultivation is not bad, but unfortunately, it is falling into the belt of Golden Triangle. Unfortunately, this year has been the bumper crop which is taken place. Unfortunately, they have started exporting the narcotics in different form,
All right.
particularly the artificially
Absolutely,
created.
sir. You're completely right, and sir, you've given a comprehensive response with solutions and the problems profoundly highlighted and what ought to be done.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.